Listening Fanfiction presents Useless Monster by Mute Crows, based on the manga and anime series My Hero Academia, or Boku no Hero Academia, narrated for you by Sierra Feast. Chapter 1, Prologue. Izuku had vague memories of how his family used to be. He could remember when he had a home, a warm bed, and steady diet. These memories were muddled, overshadowed by the burden of no longer having a place in society's unseeing eyes. For where was a monster like himself supposed to fit into a judgmental space like that? He didn't know what he was, just that he was experiencing his unique circumstances since before he could remember. That said circumstances were a major part of his father's absence, if the ghosts of venom-filled words were anything to go by. His ability was thought by his mother to be a form of quirk, one of the kinds that manifested at or shortly after birth instead of around 4 like the current average. A thought that was contested shortly before he actually reached the age of 4. He had a healing quirk, it turned out. More specifically, he could pull the pain or injury out of others as long as the wound wasn't already healed, but it had the drawback of the injury mirroring on his own body. If he healed the cut, it would show up on him in the same spot and relative size as it was on the person he healed. The manifestation of his actual quirk led to a range of questions for Izuku about what to call himself, because he was definitely not human. At least not entirely. Izuku was a monster, literally, but not all the time. The closest thing he could relate to was a kitsune or the western werewolf, but only for the shifting factor. He looked nothing like any animal he could find on the library computers when he changed. When he was 6, Inko disappeared. He didn't know where she went or what happened, but one day she just didn't come home. It didn't make sense. They were happy and loved each other just as any healthy mother-son relationship should, if not more so. After 3 days with the fridge starting to run empty and there was no sign of his mother anywhere when he looked for her before and after school, he went to the police. The computer said that when someone went missing, that you should file a missing persons report at the local police station. He got a range of looks from people as he went into the station alone. When an officer asked if he was lost, Izuku just shook his head and asked if he could file a missing person paper for his mom. A silence settled over the quiet talking in the room. It took a while, but they eventually let him do so, asking him if he had a home to return to. He did, and he said as much, not yet realizing that he wouldn't have one for long with his mother missing, and the cops misunderstood it to mean he had family to go back to. They took the report, looking thrown at the carefully and mostly filled out papers they were given. Izuku had been proud at the time and said goodbye to the nice officers, heading home with hope that Inko would be found. 2 weeks later, he was running out of food in the house and the cash that his mom had kept stashed away for emergencies. Another week and he was living entirely off of his school meals that he had already gotten free. Kachan's parents asked him after school if he wanted to come visit for a few hours, which he politely declined, well aware of the glare pointed his way. 2 more, and there was a note on the apartment door that said some bigger words he didn't understand. The library computer explained that he wasn't allowed to live there anymore and was supposed to pay someone the money owed or be out of the building by the date on the paper. So he packed his school backpack with his favorite All Might toys, some clothes, his toothbrush, school folders, and some photos from around the house. He put on a coat too as he walked out the door and wiped away tears. He was a big kid, even if Kachan and Kachan's friends would bully him endlessly about the opposite. He would prove them wrong. He was strong. He could do this. Izuku would become a hero, maybe not the same as All Might like he wished for so dearly, but he would become one and prove that he was able to be more than he was. He found an empty building with signs all over it. The inside seemed fine to him, though, so he set his bag inside and looked around what he hoped would make at least a temporary home. When he wasn't at school or doing homework, he did errands for people around the area, collecting allowance from the kind people in thanks. It's a tiny amount, even less than the small allowance his mom used to give him before she disappeared. He would save every bit that he didn't spend on the cheapest and most filling food he could find. School got a lot harder when you were tired and hungry, but Izuku worked harder than ever before, worked harder on ignoring his bullies, harder on trying to fix whatever it was about his quirk that made Kachan so mad at him all the time, harder with his quirk itself, with everything. He found a small cafe that was run by an elderly couple who let him wash dishes for money after school, crooning in pride at the drive to work Izuku had. Neither of them knowing that every day he worked, he was holding back tears of joy at the snacks they would gift him, and walked to a condemned building with no family to share it with. Izuku was 7. Izuku was alone.